the Chi-Town experience on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
Bears fans, this is the truth. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. First and foremost, Bears fans, happy Sunday to every single one of you guys. I hope you guys had a really good weekend. On today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I just wanted to share with you guys something quite interesting about what Dan Orlovsky had to say about Caleb Williams. And obviously that is all the talk going into year two is the Chicago Bears with new head coach Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams going into year two. And Dan Orlovsky has been, I wouldn't say not a fan of Caleb Williams, but just has had a lot of hot takes in regards to Caleb Williams. And there's a lot of Bears fans out there that truly hate Dan Orlovsky. Once again, he had another pretty hot take in regard to Caleb Williams, and they were just talking about Williams' early struggles at camp, and talking about Ben Johnson and a fit for Caleb Williams, just going into year two, everything about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And this is what Dan Orlovsky had to say about the entire situation in regard to Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and the Chicago Bears. Check this out, Bears fans.
Thing is going to be talked about with Caleb Williams in this offense. Getting off of the first progression and moving on. That's the building in that timing, building in that rhythm. And then the placement of the throw. Again, being elite while you're playing within the rhythm of the pass game. And that's the hiccup that has always been Caleb's back at OU, then to USC, and then to his rookie year. And that's the challenge.
Fixable? Like, how do you fix that?
Of course it's fixable. But for Chicago fans, it is not going to happen in September. He has to erase a decade worth of playing a certain style of football and rebuild the habits. It is going to take, candidly, years. You know, Ben Johnson rocket shipped with Jared Goff. Jared Goff took 4 or 5 years of the NFL in building that footwork part of his game up. And so it's not like it's going to be impossible in October, November, December. It's just going to take time. And
So once again, Bears fans, interesting comments there by Dan Orlovsky. And once again, one of the key points that he brought up is this. He has to erase a decade worth of playing a certain style of football and rebuild the habits. And there's some things that I agree with, and there's obviously some things I disagree with what Dan Orlovsky had to say about Caleb Williams. Once again, there's going to be a lot of Bears fans that comment down below on today's episode of Keek on the Mic that say, you know, Dan Orlovsky is a clown. Dan Orlovsky hates Caleb Williams. Here's what I have to say. First and foremost, one of the big things that I disagree with here is that I don't truly believe that it's going to take years for Caleb Williams and the offense to get going and light up the National Football League, right? I think it could take a couple of years for him to maybe master or learn new things about, you know, Ben Johnson's offense. I think he will always be learning and trying to get better as a quarterback of the Chicago Bears or just the overall quarterback in the National Football League. But I don't think it's going to take 3+ years for Caleb Williams for us to really see that leap from quarterback Caleb Williams. So I disagree with that point. What I do agree with, and this is something that I've said time and time again right here on the podcast, and something that Dan Orlovsky actually mentioned, he basically just looked in the camera and was talking to Bears fans saying, hey, Bears fans, don't expect this to click right away, meaning when the season starts in September, don't expect Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense expect to fire on all cylinders, which I kind of agree with. Once again, even though Caleb Williams is going into year two and we expect that leap, and even though he has the weapons on the outside and, you know, he has the offensive line to finally protect him, everything is new, Bears fans. He has, once again, new weapons on the outside. He has a new play caller in Ben Johnson with a new scheme that they're still trying to install. And, you know, obviously Ben Johnson is still trying to figure out what Caleb Williams does well and what he doesn't do well. And that goes with everyone on the Chicago Bears offense. So I do agree with that sentiment that it may not happen overnight. It may not click right away. And I've said it right here on the podcast before that it wouldn't surprise me that in the first couple of weeks of the season, you know, maybe Caleb Williams and the Bears offense does look a little bit stagnant. Doesn't mean they're not going to win those football games, but it wouldn't surprise me if Caleb Williams and the Bears offense start slow And then once they go into the bye week, and then coming off that bye week, when they play the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if that is the game that Caleb Williams has his coming out party, and it finally all clicks for, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense. So yes, I do agree with that sentiment of what Dan Orlovsky had to say. I don't think he's trying to hate on Caleb Williams. I know that's what probably sounds like to most Bears fans. I think he's just trying to warn us that, hey, there's a lot of expectation on Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears as a whole, and rightfully so. But we kind of need to tamper those expectations because Caleb Williams is learning once again. And this is another point that I wanted to bring up on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. Ben Johnson actually alluded to that fact. That kind of makes Dan Orlovsky's point even more valid of what he had to say about Caleb Williams really relearning everything, and maybe relearning some bad habits, that he had, while playing at Oklahoma or USC, and even last season, because, Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron didn't do a good job whatsoever of really helping Caleb Williams develop into the quarterback that he really wanted to be. But this is what Ben Johnson actually had to say about Caleb Williams going into year 2. And he was actually taking kind of a shot at old head coach Matt Eberflus and old Bears OC Shane Waldron as well. He said this, Bears fans, there really isn't a ton of carryover from what he was asked to do, the play calls or anything of that nature. Now we're asking him to be a little bit more structured in terms of the play calls. There's a lot more going on mentally than probably there's ever been for him. So at some point, this thing will start slowing down, and he's going to be able to catch up, and his physical ability will take over from there. Once again, we mentioned this yesterday on Keek on the Mic, and you've probably been hearing it all over as well, social media, in terms of Bears content creators. The Chicago Bears are only on install 4 of 12 of Ben Johnson's offense. So Caleb Williams is still in the beginning stages of learning the ins and outs, and obviously Ben Johnson is grilling Caleb Williams and putting a lot on his plate on purpose, because he wants to be able to see what Caleb Williams can actually handle, what he can actually do well, and what he can't do well. There's going to get a point in time when Caleb Williams actually masters his offense, and he's going to be playing on time. He's going to be playing within rhythm. He's going to be taking what the defense can give him. Of course, Ben Johnson's not trying to change Caleb Williams, right? He still wants him to make those big ad-lib plays where he rolls out and shows off his athletic ability as well. But there's also times where Caleb Williams has to showcase playing from within the pocket, showcase his good footwork, and just take the easy throw, take the easy out route to Roma Dunze, take the easy slant to DJ Moore, take the easy pitch and catch, right, to Colston Loveland as well. Ben Johnson wants the playmakers to do all the work, but it's going to take Caleb Williams to be able to get in that flow, to get in that rhythm, and to really understand what Ben Johnson is trying to do. It's really basically just playing complementary football, right? Running the football with DeAndre Swift, running the football with Kyle Monungai and Roschon Johnson. Once you get the running game going, that leads into play action. Play action leads to big plays down the field. That is what Ben Johnson is trying to get into Caleb Williams' head. I'm just playing within rhythm, playing within the offense, letting the playmakers do the work. You do not always have to be Superman to be a good quarterback in the National Football League. And I truly believe that once Caleb Williams understands that is when we'll see that massive leap from Caleb Williams here in Chicago. So once again, I just want to come on here really quick and show you that clip from Dan Orlovsky. Let me know how you feel about it down below in the comment section. Once again, he is speaking some truth. We should kind of tamper our expectations a little bit. We can be excited because there's a lot going on here in Chicago. I still think we can win about 9 football games and possibly make the playoffs as soon as this year, but don't expect it to all click by the first couple of weeks of the season. It may take some time, but once again, I don't really agree with the fact that it may take 3+ years for Caleb Williams to really be really good within this Ben Johnson offense. So Bears fans, let me know down below in the comment section how you feel about what Dan Orlovsky had to say about Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and the Chicago Bears. But as always, Bears fans, make sure you guys continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Kick on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, be back for our all new Bears podcast right here on Kick on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic.